Good morning and welcome. So it's the end of 2021, a time when we look back at the past year and look forward to the next year. And you may have your own little rituals for that, or ways to look back at the year and contemplate it, and also look forward to your goals and intentions for the new year. But in terms of applying this to the physical body, which I try to do at these times of holidays or transitions, is that we will consider today the front and back of the body, the front being looking forward, the back body looking back. It's kind of simplistic, but it's fun to play with it. So for right now, to get ready to chant our invocation, lift your spine and simultaneously feel the support in your sitting bones, your pelvis, and gently rock forward and back a little bit on your sitting bones. Feeling the balance of weight on the left and the right, and the front and the back. So you want to find the center place on the sitting bones, maybe slightly forward. And from there, you can tone your abdominals and lift up through the whole spine with the awareness of the front and the back body both expanding. Notice your breath filling the different parts of your lungs, the front and the back, and also the sides. Okay, now let's chant our invocation, which is Om Purnamada, honoring the completion of anything, but in this case, the completion of 2021. We'll start with a single Om and then do the invocation 3 times, and then one more single Om. Take a breath in. Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om. Feel the vibration of the chant in your body. If there's any change in your breath, you can notice that. All right, open your eyes and let's do some warm-ups here. Sitting, circle your shoulders. And then sitting very tall with your shoulders broad, the collarbones really broad. Turn your head to look left and right. Back to center, look up and down, only moving from the base of your neck up to the top of your head while keeping relatively still and lifted with your whole spine below the neck. And you can linger a little bit. If one of those movements feels like a really good stretch, just spend a little more time. All right, back up to center. Touch the floor lightly with your right hand, the fingertips. Move the fingertips back just a little bit, and then take your head to your left shoulder. Noticing the stretch all the way along the side of your neck and into your shoulder. And then turn your head to face down. And turn your head to face up. And again, experiment with where you place your hand. I'm moving my hand around a little bit with each of the changes in my head and neck. And then look up and down, slowly going from one end of that spectrum to the other. All right, back to center. Just pause for a minute to feel the effect from that. And then take your head to the other shoulder, touching the floor lightly with your fingertips and reaching out through those fingertips. And then you're going to experiment with where you have the hand. You can move it a little bit with each part of the stretch. So ear to shoulder first, looking straight ahead. And then look down. And then look up. And look from down to up a couple of times. And back to center. Circle your shoulders again. Okay, now the full curve and arch. So let's first establish that solid foundation in your pelvic bones and feeling, a comparison of left to right. At any point, you can change the crossing of your legs. For me, that makes a pretty big difference, whether or not I can balance the weight on my two sitting bones. You can also widen your knees a little bit wider apart so that your feet are both on the mat and one ankle is in front of the other ankle. So this is a different pose called Siddhasana, as opposed to Sukhasana, where you have crossed your ankles. And then lift up and do an arch, leaning back a little bit into both hands now. And then come forward with a curve. So here we are accentuating the front of the body and then the back of the body in the stretch. So really feel that. Okay, back to center. And now you can tighten your legs in a little bit more. So once again, you're in Sukhasana instead of Siddhasana. Inhale, lift, and exhale, turn to the right, keeping your left thigh pulling into the hip socket to stabilize your pelvis so the twist begins at your waist. Isometrically push out with both of your legs to the side. They won't move because of the sticky mat, but you'll feel a little extra stimulus around your sacrum. Okay, back to center. Inhale, lift, twist to the left. This time pulling your right thigh into the hip socket and then broadening both thighs out to the sides. So that's a stabilizing action, making the sacrum really find its most optimum position between the two pelvic bones. And then move from one side to the other, keeping that widening action going if you can. All right, now let's go down onto the balls. So let's see, we had a request for shoulders and lower back. So that's what we'll do. We'll do trapezius. Maybe, I think this is a good thing for the end of the year. Let's start with trapezius and go all the way down the back, right through the buttocks. And that'll take our whole ball work time. So start with the hard balls, the small baseball size. And move down to one end of the mat so that you'll have enough length of the mat to move back as we do this. And have a block within reach. And then lie down and pause for a moment just to feel your back. Comparing the left and right sides, and just noticing the length and width of your whole back body. And then put the balls underneath the top trapezius, starting with your elbows bent and pointing straight up. Your hands are resting either on your forehead or on the floor just behind your head. And you just let the weight of your arms settle down so the ball has some pressure into your upper trapezius. And then start to do some movements. And I'm going to suggest that you go up and down with your arms, very small amount, not much. And when you go down, you let the weight of the arms do most of that, but you can press down a little bit with them if you like when you get all the way down. And then another movement is to open out the elbows to the sides and then bring them back up. So what we're looking for always is to have the ball doing its moderate pressure into the body, and then we move that part of the body over the ball, sometimes in very specific ways, and other times in more improvised ways. Now stretch your arms back behind you a little bit more and move your upper back side to side over the balls. So your ribs and shoulders are moving, and the ball traverses laterally across the upper trapezius. And now's the time where you can put the block in if you want. It does make the pressure more intense, which some of us really like. So it's your choice. And here, once the block is there, you can also do the movement of bringing your elbows in together in front of you, and then back out again. All right, now we're going to go down to the next spot, which is between the shoulder blades. And you can leave the block in if you already have it in there, or you can take it out. For myself, I like to take it out once I'm past that first spot. And here you start again with the elbows bent at first, going through any of those movements that you want to do that I described. I described 3 different movements. One is lifting your bent elbows up and down. Another one is opening them out to the sides. And then the third one is moving your whole chest side to side. So this area between the shoulder blades is a treasure trove of trigger points. You might find some very sore spots. If it's too much pressure, you can go past those spots, but I do recommend trying for a few minutes to give those spots the pressure from the ball. And now let's move to the third spot down, so you're still in between the shoulder blades. At this point, you might want to try another position, which is crossing your arms over your chest. All right, let's go to the fourth position, which is down by the edges, the lower edges of the shoulder blades. And again, choose your arm position. And now let's go down into the middle ribs. So move the balls down slightly. At this point, you can rest your arms in whatever position is comfortable. And you don't need to move them because we're past the muscles that would be involved in that. So now you're working on your spinal muscles, moving your ribs and spine very slowly and gently across the balls, very slowly to each side. And then come back to center and move to the next spot down. If your clothing gets kind of tangled in the balls, you have to kind of stop and smooth it out. And now let's move again down. So for me, I have about 2 more spots to go before I get to my waist. But of course, everybody's a different size. So right now, you're probably near the back of your diaphragm. And this is an area that's so commonly tight in everybody that I have worked with. So it's a good place to work and spend a little extra time. Both for the health of your whole spine and also for your diaphragm to get its full movement. So now move down just a tiny bit so that we can do this area with a little more detail. So for me, I'm down near my lower ribs now, still above my waist. And as I move my ribs to one side, my pelvis automatically will move to the other side, which is fine. And now let's go to the place just above your waistline, where you're probably near those lowest ribs. They're called the floating ribs, and they move quite easily. So the ball pressure might not be so intense here once you get down towards your waistline. Now go right onto the waistline. Let's do a little windshield wiper action with the legs here. So separate your feet onto the sticky mat edges. Take one knee down and across, and of course more weight will go onto the opposite side. Just feel that. Maybe move a little bit with your ribs, and then go back and do the other side. All right, let's keep going down. I'm going to change my body position because I'm almost off my sticky mat. So the balls are just below your waist now. We'll have this spot and one more before we get to the buttocks. You're moving your hips side to side so the ball traverses over the muscles of your lower back, which are large and strong and very well protected by their fascial support system. All right, now get down to that spot just above the pelvic bones. You can feel the end point and do some movement there. If your balls have separated quite a bit, which happens commonly, just reach back and pull them closer together. All right, let's go on to the buttocks now. So you can take the balls just down a little bit. So they're on the beginning of your gluteal muscles, just below the rim of your pelvic bones. And we're going to do this and one more spot. So if you have a favorite spot on your buttocks, go ahead right there anytime. So now you're moving side to side. Maybe you can do a little pelvic tilt as well to find a different angle of pressure. If you want, you can turn your hips way off to one side so the ball pressure on the other side is stronger. And now just move to one more spot, whatever you choose. And remember, you can either move with your feet staying on the floor, or you can lift your knees toward your chest and move your pelvis and your legs together. So notice if there's one side that's much more sensitive or, reactive than the other side. Because that means that you're holding more tension there. And it's just a good thing to know, so you can come back to it later. All right, let's finish now. So take the balls out and just lie flat on the mat and maybe wiggle your hips a little bit. Do some very small movements of your spine without lifting off the mat. And now let's get ready for our usual floor warm-ups. Bring your knees into your chest and rock side to side. And then take your legs up in the air, circle your feet and ankles. And bend and stretch your legs. And let's do our crisscrossing action with the belt between the block between your legs. Bend your knees up towards your chest, block in between, arms out to the side, and your feet at least as high as your knees, possibly higher. And then you start going side to side with your legs at a moderate pace. You decide how far to go, but you don't go all the way to the floor, because we're doing this as a dynamic pose to strengthen the stomach muscles. And you can also be pressing your shoulders down. All right, and come back to center. Put the block to the side. And let's do windshield wiper. Place your feet on the outside edges of the mat, arms next to your head. Take the right knee across towards your left foot, but leave the left knee pointing straight up. So you're supporting your pelvis with that left leg. If you flop the leg to the side, there's some risk for your sacroiliac joint. So this is a safety factor, stabilizing your pelvis to keep that other knee up as one knee goes down. Reach through the whole side and then come up and do the other side. So the left knee comes across towards the right foot, but the right knee stays pointing up, and you stretch the whole left side. Back to the first side, you can grasp your hand with the other hand, or also put your left heel on top of the right knee to press it down and forward, and both of those will give you a more intense stretch. Feeling across the hip especially. Okay, other side. And come back. And just pause for a moment. So it's very common to have a little tweaky feeling in your sacrum, as one of you mentioned this morning, after doing some heavy, exertion. But we have to remember that even though the pain may be in the back of your body, some of the causes of the pain are probably in the front as well. So that exercise that we just did, the windshield wiper, is really good for experiencing what kind of tightness in the front might be affecting your back. So now the Setu Bandha preparation is to tuck your shoulders under, make sure your feet are parallel hip width apart, and then push down with your feet to lift your hips, tuck your shoulders under again, and see how you want to use your arms. They can be bent or straight or clasped. Press down firmly with your feet and your arms and lift your whole body from your collarbones to your knee, to your hips, and then, of course, the knees are reaching forward. And then bring the block underneath your hips. And this is a really good restorative in itself, so come back to this frequently whenever you have time in your day. Bring the right knee up towards your chest, stretch up through your foot, and bring it all the way down. Reaching through the heel, press down through your thigh, pull up through your abdominals. Breathe as you extend through the leg, and then bring your left knee up towards your chest. And you have the option of straightening the leg up toward the ceiling and bending it again and doing that again. So little stretch of the leg into this split shape. And go. Now both feet flat. Pause for a breath. And then lift your left leg up, straighten it, and bring it down to the floor. Reaching through the heel, pull up through your abdominals. Bring your right knee in. And then stretch your leg up toward the ceiling. Bend it again, stretch it again, and do a few more of those. Okay, both feet flat, and remove the block. And then bring in your belt, but don't put your leg up in the air quite yet. Let's do a little pelvic tilt here. So a small pelvic tilt into the anterior direction is going to lift your waist off the floor and press your tailbone down a little extra. That's anterior tilt, and then posterior tilt is your waist pressing down and your tailbone tipping slightly up. So go through that range of motion a few times. And then find the degree of forward tilt that feels appropriate for you. If you have trouble with anterior tilt, just remember that your tendency is going to be to press the waist down in this next exercise. So I encourage you to get some anterior tilt going before we start. And then, of course, you can tone your abdominals just a bit. And then you bring your right leg up and extend your arms as you grasp the belt. Keep your shoulders on the floor, and then check for that pelvic tilt. Check that your waist is not pressing into the floor, but it's slightly lifted. And then stretch your left leg out straight if you can. If that makes the other leg stretch too intense, then you can keep the leg bent. And then begin to pull on the belt. So you're stable in your pelvis. Your left leg is helping to keep that pelvic tilt. And the right leg is pressing forward away from your head to create what we call an actively loaded stretch of your hamstrings. Okay, and then turn the leg out to the side, hold the belt with your right hand, and take the leg over, keeping your left hip on the floor, Keeping the pelvic tilt, roll your head side to side to make sure you're not clenching your neck muscles. And then lift your leg back up and cross it over the midline, coming just past the vertical until you feel a good stretch in the outer thigh. Actively widen your thighs, which means you press the left one down into the floor and you press the right one out to the right. All right, and then release the belt, move your hips to the right on your sticky mat, about 3 or 4 inches. Cross the right knee over and stretch out through your right hand to the side. Your head can stay looking up straight, or you can roll your head. All right, back to center. Pause and just feel now. Other side, left leg goes up. Hold the belt with your arms outstretched and your shoulders staying on the floor. If possible, straighten your right leg out and press the thigh down. But whether your second leg, your right leg is straight or bent, establish that slight pelvic tilt, the forward tilt, which lifts your waist off the floor. And of course, during this whole series, you need to maintain that with some awareness and some strength. And then you can pull with the belt as much as your hamstrings will allow, while still pushing forward with the leg in opposition to the pull of the belt. Okay, now take the belt in your left hand, turn the leg out, and take the leg to the side, keeping your right thigh and hip on the floor. Widen your shoulders and roll your head side to side. And then come back and go across the midline. Just a bit past the midline so that you can feel the stretch in your outer thigh. And you can add to that stretch by pushing your left thigh to the left and pushing your right thigh into the floor. Roll your head side to side. Okay, then remove the belt. Move your hips to the left and cross your left knee across so that you can rest your right hand on it while you stretch the left hand out to the side behind you. And breathe. Feel this twist in both the front and the back of the body. Another thing you can do to enhance it a little more if you want to, pick up your rib cage and move your ribs a little to the right. And that will increase the stretch. All right, back to center. Readjust your spine so you're even on the mat again. And just feel your front and back body now after these warm-ups that we've done. All right, let's come over face down on the mat now. We're going to do the forearm plank and Cobra. Come down with your front hips on the mat. Tuck your toes under behind you and lift up your knees as you stretch the legs back. See if you can get a little more length from your pelvis down to your knees and down to your feet. And then with your arms, your elbows under the shoulders, clasp your hands and look down at your hands and isometrically pull your arms back towards your hips. So it's like you're going to drag the mat back towards your hips. And you'll feel a little more length coming into the front body. Look straight ahead. Lift your knees off the floor behind you. And feel that whole front body get longer from your chin to your ankles. All right, and then look down at your hands and lift yourself off the floor into plank. So plank pose uses strength in the front of the body more than in the back. So be careful not to hunch your back or round your back up toward the ceiling, which would be overusing those front muscles. Rock back and forth on your toes a few times. And then come down. Get that front body length going again. Point your fingertips forward so your hands and your elbows are shoulder width apart. And then press down into your hands to lift up and get a nice stretch from your chin down to your pelvis in the front. Press into the floor with your hands and do another moment of that isometric pullback. So you're pulling your hands back towards your hips and your front body will open up even more. Then come down. Move your hands back. We're going to do just one more Cobra. Squeeze your shoulder blades together. Bring the toes, lengthen the toes and the buttocks, and then rise up. So now with a little more push available from your arms, maybe you can get higher, but do not lock your elbows. Just keep your elbows slightly bent. Okay, now come up to all fours. And you're going to bring in some blocks and a blanket, perhaps. We're going to do down face dog with the head resting on the props that you assemble there. So each of us will use a different amount of props, given flexibility and body proportions. For me, I use a block in its middle setting, and then a towel or a blanket over it for softness. But you might need more than that. So when we go into down face dog, we do all the usual actions, but we have the nice supported feeling of the head resting, which makes the pose just have one less layer of effort and stress. And the contact with your head into the block is very calming to the brain. So bring your hands down as we always do, with the fingers slightly turned out, shoulder width apart. Do a little bit of an arch of your lower back, knowing that we're going to be stretching the hamstrings here, and that anterior tilt is a good thing to do beforehand. Tuck your toes under, lift up your hips, and then do a test to see if you've got the right amount of props for your head. You can, come out of the pose to rearrange the props as needed. You can rest your head on the very top, or you can rest your head on the forehead, kind of at the top of your forehead. That's the ideal place. And you might be able to push a little bit into the block with your head and get more of a stretch into the dog pose. So you don't want to collapse or press down in a way that makes the pose get heavier. If you're going to press down with your head, which you don't have to do, but I recommend just trying it out, then you can reach up more with your hips. Just a couple more breaths now, noticing the spaciousness in the front and back of your body. And of course, this pose tends to stretch the back body more. But see if you can keep aware of your front body as well. Okay, come on down and rest in child's pose with your head on the props that you have there. Okay, now let's come up. We're going to go to the wall for three things. One of them will use a blanket. the other two don't use the blanket, so just bring one close by. The first one is the pectoral stretch that we do often. So stand sideways to the wall with your hand on the wall, fingers pointing backward. Straighten your arm and lift your chest. And you can have your whole hand on the wall or just the fingertips, whichever you like better. And then turn away from your hand, stepping in place to bring the stretch into the pectoral muscle and the biceps muscle on the front chest and the front of the arm. Maybe down to your fingertips, maybe you got some stretch into the lower arm too. And then your head can tilt towards your other shoulder, away from the wall. Okay, let's do the other side. Fingers pointing backwards, hand is placed on the wall about eye level or somewhere between shoulder level and eye level. Lift your chest as you straighten your arm. The biceps is pointing up, that's external rotation in your shoulder. And then turn away from the wall and bring your head to your shoulder away from the wall as well. So if you have pain in your shoulder joint when you do this, make some kind of change that will ease that pain. One thing could be raising your hand higher. Another thing could be checking that you're not standing too far to one side of where your hand is on the wall, that you're pretty much in line with where your hand is on the wall. Okay, let's come down from that. Now we're going to stretch the quads using the wall. You can have a couple of blocks nearby. Sometimes getting into this pose is a little easier with the blocks for your hands. So you can put the blanket right up next to the wall. And then back up towards the wall and bring your right knee down on the blanket and the foot pointing up the wall. And this is where the blocks might be handy. You can put each block under one hand and then step forward with your left foot. So this is coming into a version of the lunge. And then slowly when you're ready, you lift up your torso and put your hands on your front knee. Try to align the knee so it faces the toes. Gradually, as you pull your abdomen up, the front body lifting, the back body lengthening downward. So this is another way that we monitor both front and back. And in general, when we're doing any kind of back bend type stretch, which this is, the tightness of the quadriceps tends to bring us forward and shorten the front body. So we lengthen up through the front body and draw the tailbone and the buttocks a little bit down. And then if you like, you can touch the wall with your fingers, maybe even bring your arms up a little bit and lift your chest and head. Okay, let's come down and change sides. So put your hands on the blocks to just extend the length of your arms. Put your left knee on the blanket somewhat close to the wall with the toes pointing up or the toes tucked under on the wall, but either way is fine. And then bring your left leg forward, your right leg forward. And then you can gradually, when you're ready, bring your arms and your hands up onto the front knee. And then think about the front and back body here becoming equally long and spacious. So that means we need to draw up through the abdomen and draw down through the buttocks. And then touch the wall lightly with your hands, maybe doing a little arch, maybe bringing your arms up. That's up to you. Okay, come on down. And now we're going to do one more thing while we're at the wall. And this is the standing split. So remove the blanket. And this time, you're still facing away from the wall to begin, but you come into all fours. and then go up into a kind of a dog pose shape and bring your feet about maybe 4 inches away from the wall. And then lift up one leg and hook your toes on the wall so you're in a split shape. And then if you're able to, walk in with your hands. Okay, and then let's change sides. So bring the other leg down. So switch, one leg is down, one leg is up. And if it's very intense for you, just move your whole body further from the wall because it gets more intense the closer you get. Try to straighten both legs if you can, but it's still beneficial even if you can't. That's okay. Okay, now let's come up to standing and just kind of wiggle your hips a little side to side. And let's do the resisted abduction of the legs that we usually do earlier in the class, but I want to do it as a direct follow-up to the previous thing we did. So bring your feet parallel, hip width apart. Bend your knees so they track towards the middle toes. Put your hands on the outsides of the knees and push in with your hands and out with your thighs. So this is resisted abduction of the hips. In other words, you're not taking your legs to the sides, but you're using the muscles that would normally do that. And that's going to give a little nice stimulus to your sacroiliac joints. Okay, come on up. Now we're going to go to the chair. And we're going to do leaning goddess first. And we're not even going to get up out of the chair. This is the restorative version. So sit on the front edge of the chair. Bring your feet wide apart with the toes and the knees pointing to the sides. And then actually shift your pelvis on the chair so that you're leaning more forward. Your pubic bone coming down and your upper body leaning forward a bit. So, maybe 30 degrees. You're not coming down to be horizontal parallel to the floor. And then push the knees with your hands and expand the front body from your pubic bone to your collarbones. So you're getting a lengthening of your spine plus a stretch of your adductor muscles. Okay, let's follow that with Parsvakonasana. So turn to bring your right thigh directly on the front edge of the chair, the right foot pointing out to the side. Step your left foot away from you and slightly forward. So this is not the complete classical foot position for Parsvakonasana. And that's fine. We're still going to do the pose. So you're lower than you usually would be in this pose. And if you want to just grab a pillow and put it under your hips, you can do that. Lift your spine and bring your forearm to your thigh, left hand to your hip. And this could be your final pose. Or you could bring your hand down to your ankle or even a block if you want to grab a block and put it there. And then roll more up toward the ceiling with your upper body, with your torso, your ribs, your shoulders, your head. And then reach back with your back hand, your top hand, your left hand, and see if you can reach some part of the chair to help you twist a little bit more. So it's quite a different feeling than standing in this pose. You're able to get more stretch through the adductors, the hips, and also twist more. Okay, let's do the other side. So come back to center briefly and just sit for a second. And then turn so that your left thigh is across the front of the chair. Your left foot turns out completely towards the end of the mat. Your right leg comes out, and it can be a little bit more forward than your left foot. So you don't have to have a straight line between your 2 feet, and because that doesn't work for a lot of people. Then lift your chest and come down to the side, either with your forearm to your thigh or your hand coming down onto your ankle. And then roll your shoulder back. Pause there to breathe a couple times. And then see if you can reach back and catch some part of the chair behind you and turn more up toward the ceiling, maybe even turning your face toward the ceiling. Breathe and be grateful for the support of the chair. Okay, come on back up. And now we'll do a couple more things here. Bring your right leg across your left knee so that you're turning out the knee and the shin goes right across the knee. So this is called ankle to knee. And if that hurts your knee in any amount, do a crossing that's slightly more towards the middle of your shin, a little further from your ankle. That will give your knee more support. The further your support is down the leg towards the foot, the more strain might come to the knee. Okay, inhale, lift your spine. Put your one hand on the sole of the foot, the other hand on the outside of the knee. Push out with your leg into both hands, and that's the same widening action that we did before. And lean forward a little bit, see what you feel in your hip. And then come up and cross the legs further over, one knee on top of the other, and twist to the right. So you can use your left hand on the knees and the right hand coming back behind you to get the support of the chair, whatever grasp you can find. Okay, back to center. Those two poses on the other side. Cross your ankle over the knee. Sit tall. Bring your hands, one on the knee, one on the foot. Widen your hips isometrically so you're pushing out with your legs into the hands. And then lean forward just a little bit, keeping your front body open, even though you're doing a slight forward bend. And then come down, cross the knee further over. Come up. Cross the knee further over, so one knee's on top of the other. Sit tall as you inhale, twist as you exhale. You keep your right hand on the knees. The left hand reaches around to catch some part of the chair to help you twist. Keep your head right up over your pelvis. And notice the front and back of your body in the twist. Okay, back to center. Now we're going to do Nadi Shodhana before we go down to the floor. So you can move your hips back in the chair if you wish, but do try to keep your spine lifted. Feet flat on the floor. So remember, this is the alternate nostril breathing. Your right hand comes up to your nose. You close your left nostril with your ring finger, and you're going to close your right nostril with your thumb. But for now, just place your fingers on your nostrils very lightly. The other two fingers, the index and the second finger, are either resting on your forehead or coming down, curling down onto the base towards your wrist. So just touch lightly. Keep your posture nice and tall. Just doing the basic necessary action to keep your hand lifted up to your nose this way. And then take a full inhale and exhale through both nostrils. Mouth is closed. And then inhale through the left by closing the right one. Inhale through the left. Close at the top, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close at the top, exhale through the left. Inhale through the left. Close at the top, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close at the top, exhale through the left. One more time. Inhale through the left. Close at the top. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close at the top and exhale through the left. And then just rest your hand down on your thighs. Sit quietly for a few cycles of breath. All right, open your eyes and we're going to prepare for Supta Virasana, which is the thigh stretching restorative. And I encourage you to use as many props as you need so that you feel some intense stretch of your quadriceps, but you don't feel any lower back pain or knee pain or ankle and foot pain. Those are the three places that often complain in this pose. So I'll describe my setup, but you're always free to add more props because the higher you're lifted off the floor, the less intense it is. So I like to sit up on a block and a half. So I have these full-size blocks and I have smaller blocks. And then I have a blanket to pad my knees and shins. And then a bolster with a block underneath it so that the bolster is slanted a little higher at the top end where my head's going to go. But you don't want to put the block all the way up by your head because then the middle of the bolster will sag and you don't want that. So put the block that's under the bolster, put it about 2/3 of the way up. And then I like to use an extra piece of sticky mat, and you could use just a towel at the backs of my knees. So I'm going to come down onto the props, sitting on the blocks. Now some of you can do this pose without blocks under your hips, that's fine. And then I'm going to put a towel at the end of the bolster for my head. Then you can take another towel, or for me a sticky mat piece, and put it behind your knees, between your calf and your thigh. So that's a lot of props, but it really helps. So now you're going to massage the soles of your feet a little bit with your hands. Make sure your feet are pointing straight back rather than curling in towards each other. So you get, an alignment of the shin bone continuing right into the foot, rather than curling your feet in towards the midline. Then start to lean back and make sure that you have something nearby in case you have to add a blanket, you can have it close by. So tuck your tailbone a little bit into a posterior tilt just before you lie back. So your tailbone moves towards your knees, and then you can lie back slowly over the bolster and rest your head on the extra towel or blanket if you have it there. And then right away, just decide, do you have enough props? If your lower back hurts, you can add another blanket along the whole length of the bolster. If your knees hurt, you can lift your hips higher. And if your feet hurt, you can put a washcloth or a small towel under your ankles. So hopefully you feel, the tightness of your thighs, but no sharp pains anywhere. And then you rest your arms to the sides and just close your eyes. And we'll spend a few minutes here to give the thighs and the whole front body this nice beneficial stretch. Let's do some breath awareness now. So as you observe your breath, notice how long is the inhale and how long is the exhale. You can attach a count to it if you want. And then begin to elongate your exhale so that it's about twice as long as your inhale. Okay, we're going to come up out of the pose now. So you can use your hands either on your feet or near your feet to push down, and then strongly lift from the back body to the front to come up. And just pause in a seated position for a moment. And then come forward onto your hands and knees. Stretch one leg back, tuck your toes and reach through the heel. Stretch the other leg back, tuck your toes and reach through the heel. And now we'll rearrange again, but you can leave the bolster and the blocks right nearby because we're going to use them again. But now we're going to do Upavishtakonasana with the chair. So what I'm going to do is sit on the bolster, the end of the bolster, but have a block under each of my legs, my thighs. So I sit on the end of the bolster. I bring the chair in so that it's in front of me. And then I stretch my legs to the sides and bring the block under each knee. Maybe a little above the knee, so it's not right on the joint. So this is a milder version of Upavishtakonasana because we're not going for an intense stretch. We're just trying to open up the backs of the legs because we just finished opening up the fronts of the legs. So press your hands into the chair seat and lift up your spine. And then come forward towards the chair with your upper body and see if you can rest your forehead either on your folded arms or a block or the chair seat. Reach out very gently through your heels. And as you breathe now in the pose for a couple of minutes, breathe into the back of your body, your lower back, your middle back, your upper back. All right, let's come up and set ourselves up now for cross bolsters, which is a 5-part sequence lying over some props that I'll describe now. If you have 2 bolsters, you would start with one of the bolsters going across the mat. But knowing that most of you probably don't have 2 bolsters, I'm going to place 2 blocks side by side to make a little bit of a bolster there. And I'm going to start building my prop arrangement slightly towards the foot end of my sticky mat. and I cover those 2 blocks with a blanket. And then I put the bolster over that, perpendicular to it, like a seesaw. Then I sit on the end of the seesaw, and my hips are down pretty low, but they're not touching the floor, and my feet are on the floor. And then I drape myself back over the bolster with my arms to the sides. So this is a gentle back bend. And you want to feel especially your breath spreading through the whole front body. Really let your pelvic floor relax and all your abdominals relax. And now push with your legs just enough to bring yourself a little bit further back onto the bolster. And now it's kind of balanced from one end to the other, and your shoulders and your hips are about the same height. Your head is draping back over the end of the bolster. And hopefully you can keep this position with no effort, and just let your back do this gentle back bend over the bolster as it's balanced in the seesaw fashion on the other support underneath it. You might want to rock a little bit on the seesaw. I think that feels good. Okay, now we're going to go for position number 3, which is tipping back further so your head lightly touches the floor, your shoulders are not touching, and your hips are at the highest point. Feel your breath expanding into all parts of your torso, especially the front, but also the sides and the back. And now we're going to move down to position number 4, in which your shoulders come to the floor, but your hips are still supported on the bolster. And you may have to adjust your clothing because it gets kind of stuck. As you come down, your shoulders and head on the floor, your hips up on the bolster, arms to the sides. And now we'll transition into the last position. This time you have to roll off the bolster and reposition it. So just do it as slowly and calmly as you can. Take the bolster, turn it parallel to the other support, nestled up against the other support, so it's two parallel shapes. And then come back and rest your knees over that, and come back to the floor with your spine and your shoulders and your head. So take a moment to do any little adjustments, lengthening out your legs, maybe rolling them in and out. Tucking your tailbone towards the props a little bit so your lower back can really lengthen. Tuck your shoulder blades under and roll your head side to side. And then just rest with your head in the center and enjoy your breath. Let's go back to the breathing awareness that we were doing before, where you coax your breath to be twice as long on your exhalation as it is on your inhalation. And you can be doing the ujjayi sound with this breath if you wish. I think you all know the ujjayi sound. Soft ocean-like sound that you make by slightly constricting the back of your throat. And then if you like, you can add a pause at the top of your inhalation. Slight pause, just a few seconds, and then exhale very slowly. Notice the movement of your ribs with the breath. The front ribs, the side ribs, the back ribs, all moving to allow your lungs to fill completely. Take some deeper inhalations and just move your body however you'd like. Roll to one side and bring your knees to your chest. And slowly come up to sitting. Today we practiced with awareness of the front and the back of the body especially. And we did a few breathing techniques to find that place of stillness at the end of the year. And we can think of ourselves embodying this transition, front body looking forward towards the new year, back body looking backward, honoring whatever we experienced in the year that's coming to an end. So you can continue that contemplation as you wish for these next few days. Bring your hands together in front of your heart. Take a breath in. Thank you. Namaste. And Happy New Year.